You mean this Spock?
Oh, yeah.
Or this Spock?
Hey, everyone. How's it going tonight?
Who's what?
Oh, wow.
Huh?
Yeah.
I knew you
Bruce
wouldn't
was totally
notice.
ready.
I knew you wouldn't notice.
What?
Totally ready.
Where? Oh, there. Oh, my gosh. There you guys are. Oh, I was looking everywhere for you.
Sorry. We
as
were
a bit of
right
a
here
jerk
the whole
tonight,
time.
I didn't tell anybody when I'd be hitting the go live button. So
Oh, that explains it.
yeah, we're living up to our name, the Unready Room, as usual.
Professional.
We're
I
not getting
just
paid
put my
for
shirt
this.
on.
Oh, okay. So first of all, before we even get started, I'm going to put this comment up here. Avenue Pad, it's been a rough week. This is what all of these guys are saying.
Yes.
Too.
Oh my God.
Like,
Yes.
what is going on?
It has been bad.
It's been bad.
Yeah.
So bad.
Yeah. Just work, like at work, everything that could happen is happening, and it was just a pain.
Oh.
Same.
Well,
Morning, noon, and night.
Yeah.
my week's the same as it's ever been. So,
Hi, Lawrence Todd.
hey everybody. Hey Stefan. David, of course. Awesome.
He better
Happy
be
to see everybody.
watching.
Liam, how's it going?
Liam.
Who's Liam?
Liam.
Liam Smart.
I know who Pastor Andy is now for sure.
Pastor Andy. Yep. Absolutely.
I don't know who that is.
It is a brilliant episode of Classic Trek that we are going to be talking about. Often listed as a fan favorite.
Yeah.
Whoops. I can't work this thing apparently. My absolute favorite episode of the original series is kind of the cliche answer. It's City on the Edge of Forever. But I have a friend who lives down the street from me that will give you like probably a 20-page essay as to why Balance of Terror is the best episode of Star Trek, period. All series, all whatever. So yeah, this is loved by a lot of people. So I'm really excited we get to talk about it today.
We're all excited.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh.
God, guys. Wake up. This is live. There's no editing here.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so Balance of Terror, okay, known for a few things, of course. The first appearance of the Romulans, which is kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And watching it this afternoon, it kind of occurred to me how many pieces of Trek lore have been built on it over the years and how much of this is just established from day one. You have the Romulans, you have cloaking devices, you have the Romulan neutral zone, the whole like underpinning of the Romulan Vulcan connection. All of that all stems from this one episode, which I think is really cool.
Well, you just summed up the whole episode.
Good night, everybody.
All right. So
Yeah.
have a good night.
I could talk about some nitpicky things.
Oh, we're gonna
Yes.
like,
All right into it.
Just and this is just a product of its time, but how many times did it
Oh my
look
God.
like someone was on set with a rear view mirror shining light just right across their side?
Yeah.
Like for the wedding? That was weird, you guys. That was weird.
It reminded me of how they shot Angelica Houston in the Addams Family movies. They did the same kind of thing where there was just this light across her face, which looks cool in that.
Yeah. And this
Weird in Trek.
not as much. I mean, look at that.
There we go. I have it ready to go.
It just really, once you see the first one, you just can't unsee it for the rest of the episode. But again, very nitpicky thing.
Yeah. The thing is, though, the other time that I remember this lighting exactly like this is in Star Trek Nemesis, when Deanna is like doing the planchette on the Ouija board of their sensor scans to find the Riemann ship.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's that same lighting right across the eyes.
I think this is the first time that technique was ever used on television. Just kidding.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, really?
I wasn't gonna immediately dispute, but I'm like, I don't think so.
I wish we could do that on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about that first scene then. So we've got this scene taking place in the ship's chapel. Ooh, religion in Star Trek.
Oh.
Not a designated religion though. They never
No.
specifically say what religion.
No.
They don't. And I noticed behind Kirk, there's two symbols. There's a cross, and then like a shield of
Oh.
some kind or something like that. I'll bring it up here again, just in a second.
And then
This
there was that sort of tree thing with candles in it.
Yeah. So if you notice, there's
Oh,
something
yeah,
that
it's a
looks like
cross.
kind of a bumpy cross, and then that kind of shield thing there.
Mm-hmm.
And Angela Martine does kind of a genuflect thing and does like a silent prayer or something before she stands
Weird.
up. So interesting. It's cool that they don't outright call out a religion of some kind.
Yeah, they just leave it to the imagination, because just because people aren't obsessed with religion in the future doesn't mean that they don't still appreciate it and practice it,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the whole thing. Infinite diversity and infinite combinations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's kind of this neat little bit of diversity. I can't remember the exact line. Does Kirk say something about our many faiths or something like that? Is that this episode or not? Now
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I think
Okay.
that's another episode. I don't remember him saying that, and I watched it again just before we started.
Yeah, me too. And then now I'm like kind of blanking on that. So yeah.
He talks about how it's the happiest duty that a captain
Duty.
gets is to perform weddings, so marriages.
Yeah, which is kind of this. They grab that line and use the same line for Picard in Data's Day when he's marrying Keiko and Miles. So I feel like that's kind of, the Starfleet approved wedding script that gets sent to the captains or something. It's kind of cool.
So I'm looking at the script here, and he says, in accordance with our laws and our many beliefs, so that you may pledge your.
Okay. Apologies, Dan.
Okay, I thought it was something like that, but I just couldn't remember for sure.
Now,
So.
this takes place in Chapel's quarters, right? Is that Nurse Chapel's
Oh wait, whoa.
room?
Whoa.
It's funny because I actually have written in my notes the ship's chapel brackets, not that chapel.
Not actually in that chapel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Avenue Pad echoing me there. Doesn't Picard use a lot of Kirk's speech in Data's Day for O'Brien and Keiko's wedding? Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
So-
see, I hate that when movies or shows take from another. That's like, Into Darkness did with Wrath of Khan.
They're just ripping off.
They're ripping off.
Oh,
Actually, to be fair, I think that is actually what ship's captains today say.
oh, so
when
they're
they
just
marry
ripping off real life.
They're ripping
now.
off reality.
Oh,
How dare they?
shameful.
I'm done.
I'm disgusted.
I hate Star Trek now. This is not Star Trek.
Yeah, not true Star Trek. Absolutely.
No.
And I mean, we're 14 episodes into this series, and this is the first we're hearing of the Romulans, like their greatest enemy that they fought a war with 100 years. I don't
Right.
think so.
It's interesting you say 14 episodes in, because I don't know why, and I know that, but I don't know why. I always think this episode is earlier in the launch of the series than what it is.
Same. I am the
Yeah.
same way.
It was recorded earlier, right? It was produced earlier, but released later.
That could
Probably.
be. The season 1 production order versus air date order, of course, is all
Oh,
out of whack.
wackadoo.
Oh,
Yeah.
So yeah, looking at Memory Alpha, it says it was the 9th of the 80 produced. So it was the 9th
Okay.
one
Mhm.
that was,
Yeah.
but it didn't show up till the 14th. Okay, well there you go.
And it's actually kind of funny, like how much isn't established yet, as opposed to how much is established by this episode. But for example, like the weapon they're using against the Romulans is they're firing phasers, but they're doing something called a proximity blast, which I've done in my name there because I thought that was funny. Photon torpedoes weren't a thing yet. That wasn't something that had been, imagined for Star Trek yet. So I feel like if they had, that's probably what would have been used, because it felt more like a weapon that gets launched and explodes kind of thing.
Yeah,
Man,
exactly. Like you said.
cool.
I'm sorry, I was thinking about something else.
I'm just that boring.
I was thinking about the Romulan theme and how they lovingly reconstructed and used that in Picard, and that made me happy.
Yeah.
So.
That bum bum
Bum
bum
bum bum bum bum bum.
Yep.
Oh, it's so great.
When you slow it down like that, though, it kind of starts to sound like Star Wars a little bit, almost like an Imperial theme, but not
Or
really.
like Gustav
or an Emperor's
Holst's
theme,
The
or
Planets, Mars.
Sean
too.
Williams stole from Star Trek. Everybody's stealing.
Well, it's honestly, there's nothing really new. All notes have been combined in every single piece of music. It's just the way in which you combine them that makes it different.
Right, because there's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I'm still waiting for someone to do an H, and that still hasn't happened.
That should be a Star Trek thing. Can you play an H flat? It's an H flat.
I prefer H sharp, but okay.
Oh man, that's amazing. Yeah, I'm just like, my brain's going to like these parallels now. How people say there's no new stories; it's just the same, 3 or 4 plots that are kind of reimagined in different ways. And same with music. Interesting.
Yeah,
I like it. So yeah, the wedding ceremony gets interrupted by a Romulan attack on Earth Outpost, or they realize that it's been attacked, and they go to red alert and battle stations. And then this is where we get kind of a bit of a continuity dump from Spock. So, which is great, like so much of what underpins Star Trek canon, the dreaded C word, going forward from here is just, vomited up by Spock here. So 100 years ago, they fought the war against the twin planets of Romulus and Remus. And now there's a neutral zone, and violation by either party of the neutral zone constitutes an act of war. And like, man, there's so much in TNG and everything going forward that is just hinges on this episode, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciated that. And today, if somebody did that in anything, people would just lose their minds. It's like, ugh. They're just saying that for the dumb people who don't know what's going on. I mean, everybody's got a bone to pick with things, but I thought it was really well done. They were informing the crew as well as the audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, of course, Spock is like, as you know, and then gives a bunch of information, which it's pretty classic. I also love this idea that no human, Romulan, or ally has ever seen the other and been able to report back, kind of thing. So, in the context of this episode, at the time, they're just writing an hour of an interesting drama in which, oh my gosh, they look like Vulcans.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get some drama out of that. But like, in crafting that neat little plot twist, just how much lore that has added to the Vulcan race and the Romulans, and then all the kind of tricks they had to do way back in Enterprise to make that all fit still and stuff too. I think that's great. I love that. Like, they didn't have that in mind. They're not crafting a 50+ year franchise. They're just writing a cool episode.
And the whole not seeing each other, or having not seen the Romulans, really adds to how secretive they are, that we learn later on down the road and everything, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I couldn't help but watch that. Every time I watch this now, I always think back to Enterprise, because it's like, Enterprise kept up with that. Did they mess up? No. It still works. It still works.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, and I even like how Enterprise kind of played with it a little bit. Like, there are some Vulcans that know who the Romulans are, but it's not widely known. It's not.
Yeah. Well, it's like that in the novels too. The novels even played to that even more. And as you're reading the Enterprise novels that take place after the TV series, you start to feel, well, does everybody know that the Romulans look like Vulcans? But we all pretend. But it's just because you're focusing on these main characters that you're reading in this book that they know. But then you realize, well, not everybody else knows. It almost feels like a Section 31 type thing. Well. Anyway, go read the books.
Section 31. Oh, I did. That's the wrong one again. I'm not doing good at this.
That's Section 31. They're trying to blind Kirk into not seeing what's really going on right now by shining this light in his eyes. I don't know.
They're testing the strength of his vision.
It's control.
There we go.
Oh, I love this graphic.
I hate
Yes.
It's amazing.
It's so classic.
You know,
And,
I wish they would have done a little more with that when they did the redo Masters or whatever.
Oh,
but
right?
fine, whatever.
I
But
love
if they made it too advanced, then it wouldn't fit in with the rest of the episode.
Well, I'm not saying too advanced, but just a little more. Little.
Yeah.
It can look the same, just a little better.
Dave says it looks like a Dungeons and Dragons map.
This is true.
It does.
This is true.
There it is.
Oh wow! I just realized if I do that, I completely cover up Chris.
Yeah, you can't see me anymore.
Well, he's the guest, so who cares? Oh, there he is. I forgot what he looked
It does. It's like, okay, so this is the river, and then
Oh, yeah.
these are all the enemy outposts on the other side of the river,
like. Look like
and we're
10
over here, and we're about how many miles away are we?
Yeah, and when they're
Each
like,
square is how many feet, Dave?
and when they said like, when they're like, oh, and here we are in proximity to the neutral, and I'm like, where? I don't see. And then I finally see the little light. Oh, there it is.
The little flashing
Way on the other side in the
Yeah.
corner.
That's like like I have this little flashlight pen, you know. It's like it can just like.
Oh, I'm gonna have a seizure.
Oh, it was lens flare. That was their version of lens flares.
Yep, that was it.
Yeah. So
Yes,
A lot
Lawrence Todd. It was Dot.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have pointed out, of course, we've got Romulus and Spock says Remus, but on this map, it's Romy or
Romy,
Rome-
like Romy and
Rome
Michelle.
Yeah. What does that mean?
I've always kind of wondered, is it supposed to be like Rom 2, like second Romulan world, or I'm not sure. Or is it not even supposed to be its twin planet, but a nearby star? I don't know.
It's probably the star. That's my guess.
It's probably just a mistake.
Well,
I'm going to say
yeah.
it's the star of their planet,
Makes
around
sense.
which their planet revolves.
Ah, that could be, yeah. That's really close to the neutral zone then. I'm assuming this is
Yeah.
not in any kind of scale because
Well, I mean, these are all of the Earth outposts, and somebody in the chat pointed out. I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was. You'll make yourself known. That they called them Earth outposts, not Starfleet outposts, but
Oh, yeah.
Earth
Oh, yeah.
outposts. But those outposts are pretty far away, so this is really. Oh, thank you for bringing that back up. This is really not to. I mean, the scale is way exaggerated.
Mhm. And I mean, it kind of makes sense too, given that the Romulan War was an Earth Romulan War. It was not the Federation.
Because the Federation didn't exist yet, yo.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly.
So
All right.
Mike Okuda just called me, and he said that he and Denise put in the Star Trek encyclopedia that Rami was an alternate name for Remus. That's what
Okay.
they put in the encyclopedia.
I remember reading that too.
Oh.
Okay.
But
then.
if it's not on screen, it's not canon. But
That's true.
it's a good
But
explanation.
if it comes from the Okudas, it's canon.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. All right. So from there, yeah, we've got no Romulan or ally has seen the other. And I love Spock here when he's giving his info dump and he talks about how Earth forces at the time said that the Romulans were treacherous and blah, blah, blah. And then he adds the line, only the Romulans know what they think of Earth. I love that line, that little bit of multiple perspectives there. And there's kind of this through line of anti-bigotry in this episode, which comes up through most obviously the character of Styles, which we'll get to for sure. But
Yeah.
I love that early line by Spock.
Yeah.
Styles. So before we go any further, I love the different shots throughout the ship of people listening to Kirk, you know, on the intercom, which I always think is funny when people are walking the hallway and he starts speaking, they all stop and look around like, who's talking? But no, and then just the different scenes, everybody like crowded around together and listening and stuff. I like those shots.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It makes it feel like there's scale on the ship. There's different areas, different crew people around.
Yeah, that's one thing I've always noticed about the original series, especially early on, is they paid very close attention to just how a ship like this would work, like how physically things work.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things in Star Trek, and it's just this really minor thing, is when like Kirk and Spock and Bones are having a conversation on the bridge, and a crew member walks up, hands something to Kirk, and he briefly looks at it, signs it, and hands it back, and then goes on with it's such a mundane, everyday thing. And I love Discovery, for example, but I was kind of kept waiting for that sort of thing in Discovery, and that just never really happens. And I'm like, oh, that would just add just a little touch of harkening back to this era and this realism of that. So, but I just love little things like that.
Now I'm gonna watch Discovery going, when are they gonna hand him a pad? When are they gonna hand her a pad?
Spock hands Burnham a pad at one time.
Really? When?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
When he brings her the logs of her mother's red angel trips. He hands her a pad.
Okay.
And she starts going through the logs.
So another little bit of tidbit here where, Styles is talking about his family history, family members that fought in the war. And Kirk says, after 100 years, would you even know what a Romulan ship looks like? And he says, you'll recognize it. It'll have a huge bird of prey painted on the other underside. So we get that origin of the name Bird of Prey here, which I'm just going to throw right out there. When I was talking about Star Trek Picard in a video, and I said, oh, they have the old style Bird of Prey show up, and somebody in the comments tried to correct me and said, it's actually a warbird. No, it's a Bird of Prey. Sorry, just a little pet peeve. I'm okay. I'm all right.
Yeah. And I do love how he keeps talking about the war, and Kirk says, their war, not yours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool.
Remember that.
Absolutely. Yeah,
what is he saying by that, though? Is he saying, like, you're way too emotional about this, or like what? Like, I don't quite get the implication.
The implication is that he is using anger from people who he didn't even know to fuel his bigotry.
Oh, yeah, it's like the generational thing that people pass down.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be carefully taught, sort of thing.
Yeah, he kind of strikes me as the kind of guy that have like glass cases at home with like, this is the cutlery and the plates that were served on the warships at the time, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, feels like he's steeped in this family history. Probably has like a couple Mako uniforms.
He's looking to get revenge for all of his family members that were killed. I'm like, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which he wouldn't have known. He wasn't alive during that war. So yeah, it's passed down from generation to generation, that family for that.
Yeah, Grandpappy Styles.
Yeah.
Great Grandpappy Styles.
Why is that so amusing?
I don't know.
It just is.
I remember Great Grandpappy Styles with those Romulans.
Newman never was the same after Great Grandpappy died.
Yeah. Sitting in a rocking chair telling us about the Great Romulan War. Smoking a pipe.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
I hate those Romulans for what they did to our family.
Absolutely. So yeah, we got a distress call from Earth Outpost 4, and we see Commander Hansen, and we get our first look at this dreaded Romulan bird of prey. And yeah, so that's a
bird.
So yeah, Commander Hansen, what do you guys think of this scene? It's very like there's the melodrama. Can you see it, Enterprise? Can you see it? I'm putting it on your screen. Can you see it? I love this scene. Like, it's just so 60s television.
Yeah. Yeah, the commander is just super over dramatic. Just like and when the weapon hits, he really just
Okay. Now I know. Now I realize it's a glitch because that is not the one that I clicked. That's funny.
I believe you.
That's really weird.
That is really weird. So if I do it a second time, click the same one, No, I guess I have to go through. Maybe if I close each of them as I go, then it won't. Because I got to go through every single one. Because it was the third one that I wanted to share. There.
Ah,
Well done.
bird of prey.
Indeed.
So Hansen on the space station. The thing that's like stood out to me, but so just to back up, Balance of Terror is one of these episodes I've seen more than most, a lot more than most, because way back in the day, way back, I had maybe 6 episodes of TOS that I recorded on TV onto a VHS tape, and I would watch that over and over and over again for the longest time. And this was one of them. But I've seen it so much on VHS and SD that now when I watch it, I notice more detail, things I didn't notice back then. And just like his eyes, just how they were like up and, like I never noticed, but it was just, and the intensity of his face was coming across more in the digital remasters than it came across to me in the analog VHS. So that's what stood out to me, is just like details like that.
Yeah. There's a lot of just iconic imagery in this episode. And yeah, when you say his eyes looking up like that, I know immediately what you're talking about. And one thing that really stands out for me, weirdly enough, is like the brown color of Styles' eyes. In a couple scenes.
Yeah.
He's got a really unique look. I don't know, but yeah.
Hey, there's no room for bigotry on the bridge, Dan. Stop talking about his eyes.
Oh, we'll get there. But yeah, so this shot is when Earth Outpost 4 is transmitting their view screen imagery to the Enterprise, and somehow still manages to transmit it after they're destroyed, which is interesting, but kind of cool. But
right.
Yeah.
Well, because they have like drone cameras around the outpost, so the cameras didn't get destroyed.
Yeah, it's the DOT things too.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because that was the reason given, I think, in the motion picture novelization for why Epsilon 9 still transmitted pictures of the cloud after it was destroyed.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I actually made that assumption when I was a kid watching that movie for the first time, because I watched a lot of sci-fi as a child.
Yeah.
That's not an embarrassment to me. It's just a fact.
Yeah. We didn't need the Akutas to tell us that, Brandi, right?
Right. I did, though. Like every about 5 minutes of this episode, I just went, oh my God, that looks so good.
So actually, that's a question I wanted to ask you guys. How did you watch this episode? Did you watch it the remastered version with the new special effects, or did you watch the classic with the original effects?
Yeah, I watched the remaster, as I was saying earlier, because of the detail. I was watching it I was eating lunch while I was in the middle of work, but then I watched this while I was eating and watched it on my computer through Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same.
I watched it on my television through my Fire Stick because I wanted it to be big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I watched the remastered version on Netflix, even though I've got the Blu-rays, but it's just so easy to just click those buttons. And obviously this screenshot is from the remastered edition as well there. So
beautiful. And I love it. It's good. I prefer this. I like the remaster better.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So Earth Outpost 4 is destroyed. And then the Romulan ship vanishes. And this
dun dun dun.
This is to the shock and amazement of everyone on the crew, because they've never watched Star Trek Enterprise or Star Trek Discovery, apparently. So this is an interesting thing with Star Trek in history and the cloaking device. And let's retcon it all and make it all make sense.
Oh,
Go.
Well, yeah, because I mean, they're probably okay. If you take Discovery and Enterprise, those series, into this, then you can say, okay, well, seeing a ship cloaked, it's been seen before, but maybe this crew has, a lot of the crew members never seen it actually happen. This is the first time seeing it.
Spock says it is theoretically possible.
Yeah,
it is.
And that's a big statement coming from Spock. So
Chris, thoughts?
No, I don't know. I don't have a thought about that.
Okay.
I just
Fair
think, sure, I'll buy that.
Well, no, I can tell you why, because Starfleet has never seen a ship cloaked before at this point. Because what you see in Enterprise and Discovery took place later.
Classified.
There was a redo of the timeline because of the
Oh my god.
Anyway, forget.
Well, when does anybody but Discovery see a cloaked ship, really?
In Discovery Season 1, the whole fleet, because
they're at the war.
Okay, right, because that was the sarcophagus ship.
The sarcophagus ship, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay, but most of the people there died.
No, I'm talking about throughout the whole war, because there was a whole concern,
and they were giving the cloaks to other ships.
Starfleet was on the verge of losing the war because of the Klingons' cloaking ability.
I'm just thinking that part of the ceasefire may have been that they didn't spread it around, the information about the cloaking devices. That's what I'm going to say in my headcanon.
Okay.
I'm still trying to think how the eugenic wars happened in the 1990s.
Yeah.
It's funny, as Star Trek keeps going, we're going to have to keep doing this. Like, World War III is supposed to be happy. First Contact is supposed to be... Oh, no, okay.
Does that mean that Star Trek is in a different timeline than we are then?
Yeah.
This is what makes me sad, because I'm worried that we're in the mirror universe.
Well,
I have said more
than
once that we're in the darkest timeline. So.
Yeah. Well, let's not dwell on that.
Good night, everybody. Sweet dreams. Have a great weekend.
Oh, no. So the interesting thing about this cloaking device that the Romulans have, though, is it does render the ship invisible, but the ship still shows up on sensors, interestingly enough, which I thought was kind of cool. So the Enterprise can still track it. So it's of limited usefulness here, because Enterprise can still track it on sensors, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. Well, it does take a lot of energy to cloak. So even if you couldn't track the ship itself, you could track the energy signature, because it would be outputting a ton just to keep them cloaked.
Mm-hmm.
And for the weapon, to discharge the weapon as well. Lots of energy. They actually say that in the episode.
I'm just going to call out a comment here, because what?
What?
Sorry. The Discovery writers were sued and lost for plagiarizing a video game. You're losing me on this rabbit hole. Yes, they were sued. No, they did not lose. They won that case, actually. I can read you the judges.
I think John is saying that we're losing him with this conversation.
Yeah, so that's what he said.
We'll leave that alone. I'm sorry.
John.
I just saw that and I'm like...
So Discovery won, we lost.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay. So...
can I go back to the theoretically possible cloaking thing, whatever? Spock's saying that because they haven't figured out how to do it. That's why he said that.
Okay, we'll go with that. I like that. So not the Romulan commander, but someone else on the Romulan ship, who we find out later is Decius, sends a transmission against his commander's orders, and the Enterprise intercepts that communication, which gives them a look at the bridge. And I'm going to get this right this time. Knock on wood. We get our first look at the Romulans. Dun, dun, dun!
Oh, it's that Klingon from the motion picture.
No, I'm pretty sure that's Spock's dad.
Spock's daddy is undercover.
Same
person. Call that out, Bruce. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Same person.
Yep. So, we get that. Oh my goodness, are they Vulcans? What's going on here? And of course, you get Styles doing the wah, wah, wah.
And then he just stares at Spock for the longest time. Just
and Spock is first like this, and then he's like this, and then he's like this. He's just as surprised as anyone.
Well, of course, his dad's on the Romulan ship. Like, that's wild.
Well, no, that's true because I don't remember where I read it. It was probably a novel, maybe a comic or something, but I remember reading something where Spock reflects back to this time and thinks about how he saw this commander who looked remarkably like his father.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Does that ring a bell to you, Dan?
It does. And why do I feel like it was Peter David?
It probably was. It sounds like something he would do. And then the other thing, this is the one thing I always find interesting about Star Trek is that it feels as if you see one alien species and you see another one that looks like it, then they must be the same. But we see so many human looking species and no one goes, oh, that must be somebody from Earth, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But so it's odd that, yeah, because I would think there's other species out there in the galaxy that have pointed ears and have no relation to Vulcans or Romulans.
The Hulkins, do they have pointed ears too?
Who are the Hulkins?
The Hulkins?
The Incredible Hulkins?
They just looked like humans, but I think they had like a green circle.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Okay.
They're from Mirror Mirror, I think.
Right, Mirror. That's right. Yeah.
Ah, yes.
Just similar name. Okay. Sorry.
Now I know what you're talking about. Yes.
So yeah, of course, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mark Leonard into Star Trek, who interestingly was one of the, I've read this somewhere, I don't have a source, I apologize, was apparently one of the finalists to play Spock, actually. And apparently. So
that's why he doesn't look too happy right there.
Should have been on the other ship.
Oh man,
he's like, oh, Grandpa, be Sarek.
Lawrence Todd said it's Spock's Uncle Earl.
I like that.
Uncle Earl. Oh. Guys, just don't listen to anything he says, okay? It's Uncle Earl.
You know, Uncle Earl's a little.
Mark says, do we get a name for the Romulan commander? We don't. He is credited simply as Romulan commander. Like, actually, the Romulan commander from the Enterprise incident as well never gets a name in the episode. So, yeah, they don't like to name their Romulans, apparently.
Well, they have the different names too, right? The 3 different names or whatever.
Oh, that's right too. Yeah. Unless Kirk becomes so at the end of the episode, he says, in another reality, I could have called you friend. If they became more than friends and were each other's true love, then he would know his true name.
Right.
It would be funny if he says, you know, in another reality, I could have called you friend. And Kirk's like, and I could have called you. What's your name? What would I call you? Still didn't get a name.
No worries. It's okay. I'll wait for the credits to find it out. Credits. Dang it.
It was his duty to remain nameless so that Kirk couldn't report back on him.
Maybe they're not allowed to say the name.
That's
maybe the other Romulans weren't allowed or something.
They're super secretive.
Geek Filter says, I don't think we've ever seen just plain looking humans, and when we have, they do call it out. So there were quite a few alien races in the original series that looked exactly like humans.
Yeah, and I was thinking primarily the original series. That's true.
Yeah.
The Zeons,
they're Voyager too. A couple on Voyager.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's less often in the later series.
The Voyager episode Time and Again from season 1. They look exactly like humans. They just wear ugly striped shirts. I hate the costumes in that episode. I'm sorry. All right.
So I like doing research while we're doing a live show. So according to Memory Beta, the commander of the Romulan ship is Karis.
Okay, I was going to talk about that because there are, I think, the Romulan Spotlight comics name him or something. Or is that from a novel? I'm not sure now.
Let's see here. I see. Well, I don't know where the name actually came from. I'd have to do a little more work, but I think he was mentioned in the novel The Return. I don't know. I'd have to do They don't really call out where the name comes from. They're giving me his whole history. I see something. Well, just keep talking. I'll figure it out.
Okay.
So he's careless. How careless?
It's Keras.
Keras.
Or Keras or Keras.
Mhm.
Well, for the purposes of this episode, he doesn't get a name.
That's true. Yeah.
Fair enough.
I was just like, yeah.
So Aaron also says regarding aliens that look like humans, unless it's part of a parallel Earth, humans planted their colonists, etc. Yes, except again, like I'd say the Zeons and the Ecosians look exactly like humans. They're not a parallel Earth. They were influenced by John Gill. But anyway, doesn't matter.
Yeah, but they were seeded around.
Nope.
Well,
Not said in that episode anyway.
no.
Anyway. Yeah, so
I wouldn't go up against Dan, honestly. I would
Nobody's going up against anybody.
Oh, so it's Sarek backwards. Christopher Hill.
Oh,
said
wow.
right there.
Whoa.
Duh.
That is ridiculously clever.
That's great.
Annoyingly clever.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Good
I love
catch.
it.
Can I also say, with regards to that shot of the bridge, that they intercept the communications and get a look at their bridge, that this intercepted transmission also does like a really dramatic push in?
Yes. I know. I'm just like, wow, they have really good cameras on that
Great.
bridge. How do they know when to zoom in? Oh, somebody's watching. Zoom.
I do like the camera movement in this because we don't see a lot of that in TOS like that.
That's true. It's very static a lot of the time.
And by the way, Keras comes from the Star Trek customizable card game, and it was the expansion one for the Trouble with Tribbles. There, I found it. So that's where.
Okay.
Wow.
All right.
Nice work.
I sound smart. It's not. I just know how to look things up.
Liam Smart has a really good point. Sorry, we're on this tangent of alien races that look like humans.
I love this.
The Voyager episode Critical Care. Yeah, the young guy and also the doctor that's played by that guy who's in Star Trek a bunch, whose name I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but he played the president in a few seasons of 24 as well. Oh, I can't remember his name. I really like the actor.
John.
Oh, dang it. But yeah, they look exactly like humans as well, which is weird. Season 7 of Voyager. That's pretty late. That's funny.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anyway.
Very.
Interesting rabbit hole. I want to do a video about aliens that look like humans now.
I know. I was just thinking about that too.
Well, if only you had this channel on YouTube in which you could do that and express your opinions. Oh, wait, you do!
Crazy.
You should do that, Dan.
What I want to talk about now is probably my favorite scene in the episode. It's that famous line, leave any bigotry in your quarters. There's no room for it on the bridge, which great line. So, of course, we find out the Romulans look like the Vulcans, and Styles has already voiced a concern that there may be a Romulan spy on board the Enterprise right now, which is interesting. A bit of logic there. But so Spock under suspicion in this episode by this guy. So
yeah.
I love this line. I've seen it get used in like comment threads about Star Trek, all that kind of stuff. I love it.
Well, the interesting thing is the look on Spock's face when this is going on. He doesn't look like he's dispassionate about it. He actually looks a little bit uncomfortable, which is really weird for Spock. Because usually he's only uncomfortable at his extreme displays of emotion, which I guess this is. But at the same time, I think it was more about the bigotry. And I think he was just, I don't know, maybe he was having a flashback to being tormented on Vulcan by the Vulcan children who hated him because he was half human.
I like that.
He had this look on his face that you don't really ever see very often on Spock's face.
Now, part of me is wondering, like, we're in a television series. This is only the 9th produced episode, 14th aired episode or something like that. I'm wondering how much of that is kind of played up a bit for the audience. Like, there are a couple things that if you just strip away all your knowledge of Star Trek and just approach it as this brand new show with these brand new characters, what if Spock is an enemy agent all this time and he is doing these things, and you're watching this and like some of his uncomfortableness and some of the weird mistakes that he makes in this episode, like later on when they're doing the run silent thing, he's the one that accidentally hits the button and signals their position to the Romulans. I wonder if at this time the writers are like, ooh, we're going to plant little seeds that make you think, oh, what if this guy's right? I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. No, I believe that because, well, I can see where somebody's watching this episode and they're new to Star Trek. I mean, back when this series first aired, these characters weren't well known. Some people were coming into the show maybe at this episode or just one episode before. They weren't starting from the very first episode. You weren't doing binge watching back then. And so when you watch this, you may be believing that Styles may be right. Like, and maybe Spock, I mean, for us, we're going to watch and go, yeah, Spock's not wrong. I mean, because we have history and we know the character, but a lot of people may have been doubting that and wondering, maybe he is a spy.
And especially because it was in the 60s and there was bigotry then, and there's no bigotry nowadays at all.
Yeah. It never happens.
If only Grandpappy could see today.
Oh, man. And I mean, like, yeah. It just strikes me as like a viewer watching the show, maybe not necessarily suspecting, oh, Spock is a bad guy, but like thinking like, ooh, this looks bad for Spock. I wonder how he's going to prove that he's loyal by the end, kind of thing, you know? Yeah. Whereas we don't need that. Like this is a show, this is an episode 50 plus years in the past. We know all this history and stuff, but at the time that would have been a source of tension that we just don't really experience watching it now.
And at the time when they see Spock's father in a later episode, they're like, wait, the Romulan commander, he lives.
Right.
I was so confused by that as a child.
Really?
Because I was not old enough to understand. I'm like, but wait, that guy, didn't he die?
Oh, so you did think that.
So confused.
Yeah.
But you have to understand I was like 3 or 4 at the time. So my discerning abilities were not that great, but there was I remember very clearly one memory of watching this. I don't know if it was for the first time because there has just always been Star Trek. I can't remember a time before Star Trek. And I was watching it. I was sitting on my dad because I was a little bit scared, and Dad let me sit on his lap when I got scared of Star Trek. And when Styles starts saying these things about Spock, I'm just like getting indignant, and I'm like, no. I'm just being this sassy little kid going, no,
that's so
I
cute.
know Spock.
Oh.
And because he was my favorite. He still is my favorite.
Yeah.
But he was just as a child, he was my favorite character. And that love continues to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Aww.
That's awesome. So
that's so
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I forget it. I don't know what I was gonna say. Oh, I know what I was gonna say when Brandi said she was confused. This is really dumb. I don't know why, but I also in my memory I thought that's like when I was a kid. I was confused when I would watch the Jackson 5 cartoon why all the bad guys had the same voice coming out of them because it was the same actor. See, does anybody remember there was a Jackson 5 cartoon? There was, and every villain, every bad guy or whatever, it was the same voice actor. And they all sounded exactly the same. Yeah, look that up. Jackson 5 cartoon.
I'd like to take this opportunity to announce mine and Bruce's new podcast talking about the Jackson 5 cartoon specifically.
Oh, that'd be fun.
What's the title of it?
Positively 5? No, I don't. I don't know. I got nothing.
I don't know. I was gonna say beat it, but I don't know because we beat the subject to death.
That's fair.
That works. That works.
I thought we had to take a drink every time we mention our Positively Jackson 5 podcast.
Jacksatively, I don't know.
You know why? Because that podcast, it's bad. It's bad.
It's really, really bad.
Yep.
If you have to say that you're really, really bad, you are already losing the argument. I'm just saying. It's like, oh no, I'm bad.
Rankin
Oh,
Bass
really?
Productions did the
Oh.
Jackson 5 cartoon.
I do remember that company.
Not a surprise.
Yes. And that voice actor I was talking about, his name is Paul Freese.
Exactly, Marg. Exactly.
Not only have we gone off track, we've gone off trek. So,
Dad jokes galore.
I love dad jokes. They remind me of my dad. So, Mark did say Yeoman Jackola to remember actors' faces is very impressive. I have always been a very visual person, and even as a small child, I would remember actors from thing to thing. And when Mark Leonard showed up on an episode of Buck Rogers, I'm like, what is this? Because I wasn't quite to the point where I understood that these were not real people.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But
so speaking of styles as well, there was a conversation kind of happening in the chat that I was following a little bit about captain styles in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock.
yes.
However, they are spelled differently. So presumably no relation.
Well, either that or the credits did a typo.
Could be.
Because Uhura was spelled wrong in one of the...
Oh, Star Trek 6, Uhuru. Yeah.
Uhuru. Uhuru?
What? Seriously?
Uh-huh.
I never noticed that before. That is horrifying.
Horrifying.
It's really annoying. And it's just, you can't just go back and change it. It's just like there forever.
They, you know what? When they put out the remastered versions, they could just fix that.
They could, but they didn't.
That would have cost an extra $5, $6, $7.50, you know.
Exactly.
Oh yeah,
Just to
let's
get it
not
to
bother.
go.
Let's not bother to get somebody's name right.
So
it's a lack of respect, is what I'm saying.
That movie's not canon anyway, so. Just kidding. I'm kidding. I have no idea.
Uh-oh.
I'm not one of those people.
So now that we know what the Romulans look like, we get to have scenes inside the Romulan ship because now it's not a secret from the audience.
Yeah,
so
we
see this interesting thing play out between Decius and Chris is making fun of my hand movements.
No, I'm not. No.
I
I
said
about the ship being small, and he was like, "Yeah, it's."
Yeah, I wasn't making fun of you. Never.
I know. I'm just kidding. I know I do it. So yeah, Decius on the Romulan ship. I'm just going to do this now. I love this scene, like this kind of Romulan politics going on here. And again, it's just such a insight into Romulan culture this early on. We've got this like sneaky rat Decius guy who's sending messages to the Praetor and is like the Praetor's spy aboard the ship, it seems. And the Romulan commander who's kind of, his politics don't seem to really align with the Praetor's maybe. And we've had comics explore all of that as well, but I just think it's a really neat insight into kind of the machinations of Romulan culture here, really early on for them, which is cool.
Yeah, and the commander is just like tired of all the crap.
Yeah.
But he remains dutiful because that has just been instilled within him. And he even wishes for destruction before they reach home.
Yeah, but
he got what he wished for.
Yeah.
That
was.
I had forgotten that they used the term Praetor until I rewatched it, which is really cool.
Yeah, very much modeled on the Roman. We've got the centurions and the Praetor and all of that stuff as well.
Yep,
it's kind of cool.
Well, and this whole cat and mouse game between the Romulan ship and the Enterprise is very much like old submarine war movies. In fact, there were moments where I was thinking of Das Boot because, that's another captain that really doesn't want to be doing what he's doing, but he's going to fulfill his duty.
Mm-hmm.
So,
did it remind y'all a little bit of Wrath of Khan too? I thought about that a little bit when I watched it again today.
Yes,
absolutely. Yeah, I think both of the scenes in this episode and Wrath of Khan are very much like they studied submarine and naval warfare movies specifically for the template for that. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is that the Enterprise is modeled kind of as a naval ship. It's just in space instead of water, because all the sounds on the bridge are sounds that you would hear on a submarine. And boy, is that a noisy bridge or what? I don't remember it being that freaking noisy.
Oh yeah,
it's so noisy.
Yeah. Wouldn't you think it would drive you crazy after a while if you're on that bridge and it's just that noise all the time?
Mm-hmm. Well, you'd probably eventually get used to it and just be able to kind of drown it out, unless you got a red alert or something out of the ordinary.
Yeah. I often wonder, because it's a TV show, and so we're only seeing snippets of time and stuff. But it's like when Kirk gets in his chair and he's like, "Mr. Sulu, warp 3," and they're traveling for several hours. I think, are they all just like sitting there for like hours?
So Sudoku.
Hey, I challenge you guys to a Cottiscott game. Let's get it out.
Can I go work on the puzzle for a little bit?
I've always wondered that.
All of those clipboards that they're bringing Captain Kirk is basically just word searches and Sudokus.
And they're passing it around, taking a turn. It's
Kirk's
turn.
I was just gonna say, like, I thought you were going to turn in the Scrabble game. Oh.
I thought you were going to say he's playing Words with Friends.
That's it. The earliest version of Words of Friends.
I love it.
Before social media.
Do you ever think they sit on the bridge so long that like the stars going by aren't actually the stars going by? It's just gone to the screensaver.
No, they'd probably have a different screensaver so that be able to tell. It's probably like the snake thing.
or like those patterns
that eats the pixels.
Yep.
Little worms.
Yeah.
You see the little flying toasters.
Play Pong on it.
And then when that neutral zone map comes up, they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's so much better! Look at the graphics on that thing."
I love it.
Top notch.
So yeah, we get a briefing room scene, and there's a couple things that I love in this scene. So first, we got Spock's dramatic presentation of what the Romulan weapon did to the shield of the outpost, the Castrodinium or whatever that he smashes. And then there's this really subtle little bit. And actually, it's towards the end of the scene, so we'll get to that in a minute. But this whole scene here, did anybody else think that Spock is advocating a Vulcan hello to the Romulans?
A little bit.
I didn't even think about that.
I didn't think about it, but when somebody mentioned that, I thought that was a very, very good observation.
Mm-hmm. And I do remember when Discovery first came out, somebody had mentioned, one of the writers or something, like, go watch Balance of Terror or something like that.
Nice.
Who were saying that Burnham's thing, the Vulcan hello, was such an un-Vulcan thing. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I love that. That's really cool.
Yeah, that is.
So yeah, Spock says, if these are descendants of the Vulcans, like I think that is possible, it's imperative that we attack. And attack becomes imperative, he says. Weakness is something we dare not show. So yeah, the quintessential Vulcan advocating for a first strike, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in his mind, it's logical.
Absolutely.
With what they do know of the Romulans.
Mm-hmm.
It's the logical move.
Yeah.
Definitely. So the other little thing in this meeting, and it's very subtle, and I absolutely love it, where they're nearing a comet. They're getting close to a comet. And Kirk says, Spock, analysis of the comet, and hands Spock a book. And it's like a astronomical. Mercury's in retrograde, and no, it's an astronomical chart book that, like, he's saying to Spock, here's the book, look up the comet and tell me about it. And Spock, doesn't even look at the book, he just puts his hand on the book and like pushes it away and
Yes.
from memory what the comet is. I love that.
Yes.
I absolutely love that.
I was trying to make out the name of that book earlier. I couldn't really make it out. What does it say? Because to me, it looks like it says Table of Comets. That's what it looks like to me.
Possibly.
And that is exactly what it says. I'm looking
Really?
at
Does that say comet or something else?
Oh
It
my
doesn't
God.
make
It says
sense.
table of contents.
table of comments, galaxy something.
So it does say Table of Comments. Really? It's so
That's
weird.
funny.
I was like, I'm obviously not reading this right, but I guess I was.
Maybe they told the props people to make a book that's called Table of Comets, and they thought that they said comments, so they made a prop that said Table of Comments on it.
That's it.
It
Another
definitely says
typo.
comments, though. That's awesome.
It's another typo. Well, okay, so I just went on Memory Alpha, and yeah, it's Table of Comets. There's a whole page about it. Yeah.
I love it.
Wow.
But yeah, my absolute favorite thing is like Spock's just like, no. Comet
he's just-
Icarus 4, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, well, and I always found that kind of weird because I'm just thinking, you guys have a computer with archives and stuff on it. Why are you bringing out a book?
Just
Well,
out
yeah.
of nowhere.
It's like when Uhura uses the book to read Klingon on the
Oh,
Undisputed
Well,
right.
that makes
Century.
sense because you don't have that in the database.
But why wouldn't you
I
if
hate
you have
that
a
scene.
book?
Because
They said-
Nobody ever thought they would need to speak Klingon
Well,
on a
Chekhov
starship.
says that the Klingons would detect them using the translator.
the universal translator. But
So I guess the
why don't they
comments-
call it up on the library computer. That
The
seems-
Romulans would detect them reading the Table of Comets if it was.
Uh-oh.
What, Dan? Why so serious? Is he lost?
I think
Dan.
he froze.
Oh,
He's gone.
We've
no.
lost Dan.
Oh,
there he is. He's back.
Okay.
Oh,
That
you
was
missed-
really weird.
You
You
missed a
all
funny moment.
disappeared.
Well, you
Okay.
disappeared from us for a second. You were frozen. We thought you were just upset with our laughter.
Oh no, I was worried that because I started the meeting, maybe it ended because mine shut down or something. I was like, but okay, cool. You guys are
We're
still
good.
here.
Yes.
All right. I have no idea what happened there. What I miss?
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, go back and rewatch it. It'll be funny. The second time, it won't be funny.
All right. Okay, so where are we now? So theorizing about the origin of the Romulans, like I said, Vulcan or Spock says that they could be an offshoot of the Vulcans, and of course we know that from Star Trek history. That's a part of canon now. And the phasers being set to proximity blast, photon torpedoes not imagined yet. I thought that was kind of cool. And then we get, the dramatic scene of the Romulan weapon being fired at the Enterprise and them employing emergency reverse warp speed to get away from it, which I thought was...
Yeah, what's emergency warp speed? I kept thinking, is that warp speed 1, 2? Like, what is emergency warp speed?
I would imagine maximum, trying to
You
get
jump
away.
straight to
from stuff.
9.9. I don't.
Yeah.
But with
Is
Just
that,
backwards.
Like, that's just kind of...
with
We're
that-
figuring it out.
I feel like there's a way to. This probably not a good thing for the ship, but this is how I headcanon it.
Oh, I can't wait for
It's,
that.
it's a thing where they can use it sparingly, but they can go to their highest warp factor in like an instant rather than moving up from 0.5 to 1 to 2, etc. In the case of trying to get away from something, it's kind of like a defense thing. So it's just this little button they have. They just press that. It's kind of like, you don't always. It's like an airbag, but it's warp drive. It can only help in an emergency.
Maybe who was it that said to do that? That gave the order to go to emergency warp speed.
I think it was Kirk. Right?
So maybe he was like so flustered that he accidentally just whatever blurted out. He said the wrong thing or something too.
and everybody's like,
warp speed. And everyone's like, oh, okay, we know what he means.
Yeah, it was Kurt. He says, full astern, emergency warp speed. And then he says, do we have emergency warp?
Maybe it's like when you're driving a standard and you just like rev it really high and pop it right into fourth from first or something.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's like that.
I'm trying to think of
sense.
like what Brandy's saying. I'm trying to remember something from like a movie or shit where somebody has a car and if they push the button, maybe it's like Batman from the 60s. Where they push
the little
button
like
and
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's like that,
yeah.
right?
That's a good
So-
screenshot too. It looks like
Yeah.
it burns.
But it would be hard on the engine, so it's not something that they use a lot of the time.
But
that makes sense to me.
But hold on, this fireball that they're shooting, and then the Enterprise goes to emergency warp, whatever warp speed that is. This fireball is going at warp speed too, and then when it fizzles out, they say, "Oh, it only has a short range." They've had to have gone pretty far at emergency warp for 2 or 3. Remember, they said it was going to catch up in 2 minutes.
Well, he doesn't say short range. He says limited range.
Okay, limited range, but still
any distance, right?
Yeah, but
he's just saying that at some point it does dissipate.
But would it go at warp speed?
Apparently, according to the episode.
I mean, it's just okay
because it was overtaking them. They were definitely at warp, and it was catching up to them.
I know, but if you're going at warp for 2 minutes, you're going to go a pretty far distance.
Agreed. Yeah.
And that fireball would have to go a pretty far distance at a warp speed. I'm just saying that I don't buy that. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah, because
me.
Well, what good is a very slow weapon?
Especially in this like era, right? So I think the implication is it's because we see them talk about, not in this episode, but they talk about Romulan plasma torpedoes. And we do know that torpedoes go at warp speed, supposedly, even though the evidence on screen, it doesn't look like that. But that's what, the technical manuals say and stuff. So I think it's supposed to be a torpedo of some kind.
Okay.
It's not some kind of disruptor type of thing.
Plasma weapon is what they call it.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's kind of
murky.
Yeah.
They hadn't refined the torpedo part yet.
Maybe it was experimental and,
Oh, it was absolutely experimental.
Yeah.
That's definitely the feeling that I got, because it was just one ship making a tear through all of these outposts along the neutral zone. And then the commander says, we have when we take proof of the human's weakness to the Praetor, and we will have proof. So this was an experiment to see how well their cloak worked, how well this weapon worked, and if they could start another war, because the Praetor obviously wants a war.
Yeah.
And he also wants to go home.
Well, the commander wants to go home.
The commander, that's right, the commander. I just want to go home.
Yeah.
So another
Miss Grandpappy
thing with regards to this scene, a question that a comment brings up here: did Rand and Kirk stand a tad too close for professional comfort?
I wanted to talk about this because it really bothered me that she, Rand had to get all up nuzzled into Kirk, and then he nuzzled up. I hated that. I didn't like that at all.
It's very much the 60s leading man. Yeah.
Yeah, well, if we're going to go there, let's talk about that hug at the end of the episode where it looks like...
I know!
They just died, but your hair smells so good.
Yeah. I didn't like that either.
I mean, she went to him. He didn't go to her. She did go to him. So she instigated it, but I felt like he was like enjoying it in an inappropriate way.
I think they were dating. What? They had to.
He's like, hey, so
He's like, he's out of the way. We're all good now.
Yeah.
Okay, so interesting thing about that. So Angela Martine, who's that character, she's going to get married to this Tomlinson guy in this episode. I don't know how many episodes away after this episode Shore Leave airs, but she's in that episode flirting with this whole other guy dating him just a few episodes out from this. So
Hey,
well, but we don't know how much time has passed.
Yeah.
Is it the same character?
Same character, yep. Angela
Oh.
Martine.
So she did say that she was all right.
That's true. She's like, I'm all right.
She's like, I'm all right because I have another guy in mind right now.
Yeah. She's like, well, that would have been fun, but hey, you
Maybe
know,
she's polyamorous.
Yeah. So anyway,
Yeah.
I mean,
So yeah, sure. Her and Esteban Rodriguez were kind of getting chummy on the Shore Leave planet, apparently.
That's okay.
Yeah, nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, nothing wrong.
Yeah.
I would do the same thing.
because
me too.
it's like a week between episodes for us, but it could have been months between those episodes as far as their timeline.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't know they're living in a season 1 environment.
They don't.
That's true.
It's too
like-
soon for me to date you. It's still season 1.
Right.
So moving on from the weapon, Kirk decides to enter the neutral zone, chasing the Romulan ship, and then shortly thereafter we get that running silent bit between them. So this is where it like shifts into high gear submarine warfare movie. They're being quiet, they're whispering, even though sound can't carry across the vacuum of space, but that's okay. That's all right. We want it to look like a submarine movie, so we're gonna make it look like a submarine movie. And then, yeah, we get that scene where Spock, of all people, accidentally hits the button and sends a signal that gives away their position. What did you all think of that?
I thought he was forcing a confrontation.
Ooh.
What?
So Spock is a traitor.
No, he wasn't a traitor. It was logical.
Hmm.
And it was also shortening the duration of the cat and mouse game and getting to the point of it. Because,
That's mutiny.
I don't think so.
I didn't take it that way.
There's
I
nothing.
definitely didn't think
There's nothing that says that he was trying to do that. It's just I thought he's not that careless. So,
Yeah. See, I don't think he's that careless, but I also don't think he's insubordinate either.
No, I don't think he's insubordinate, but at the same time, how long could they have kept that chase up? And the longer that they spent in the neutral zone, the worse it was going to get for the Enterprise.
Yeah. But Spock, if he was going to do it on purpose, would approach Kirk and say, I think we should do this. And Kirk would give the okay or nay, and Spock would follow that order, though.
Maybe he just wanted to play with Styles. He's like, call me a Romulan spy? I'm going to mess with you now, boy.
Yeah. Come after me now. Come on.
Yeah.
Let me see what you
Come
got.
on.
Dan,
dang. Okay.
Put up Patrick's comment.
I like that one too.
I just saw that too. This one?
Yeah.
Because I did not know that, and that is really cool.
That's awesome.
No. Yeah.
Two of the characters we saw killed by Krall in Star Trek Beyond were said to be Martine and Tomlinson. I did not know that.
So there's
cool.
a scene where they're right behind him.
Yeah.
Like tortured, and they're like, yeah, and it's supposed to be them.
Oh, dang. I had no
they
way.
went together.
I was reading.
I know
idea.
I know that exact scene you're talking about. I just it didn't occur to me. Didn't make the connection. Wow.
Let's go watch it now.
Okay, cool.
Hey, if that's one of the ones that's picked by our audience tonight, maybe.
Do not start suggesting things yet, guys.
Yeah,
We'll
not
tell you
yet.
when.
That'll be later. They
We'll
don't
tell you
count
when.
if you start suggesting them now. So what else have we got? Oh, during the whole running silent thing, I kind of jumped to the end of it, but there's a scene during that is one of my absolute favorite scenes in Star Trek. And I'll put up the There's got to be a faster way to do this. This is ridiculous. There we go. So the scene between Kirk and Bones at the doorway of his quarters, where Bones says, you know, in all the galaxy, there's 300 million stars and 300 million galaxies. And in all of that, and maybe more, only one of each of us. Don't destroy the one named Kirk. I love that scene. It's beautiful.
I do too, but every time I watch it, I'm always looking at Shatner, and I always think of Shatner like wanting to break up laughing because he's got this little grin the whole time. If he's like, you know, trying to hold it in.
Maybe that was like their 10th take because he kept cracking up during the scene. And they're just like, stop wasting film, Bill.
That's funny because I did not get that from his expression. I got that my reading of his expression was like, I really admire this person for his deep thoughts. I don't know. I could be reading too much.
I was reading as Shatner going, I am such a better actor than this guy.
Okay.
Well, that's pretty much anything
from now on
Shatner's
now,
in,
so.
I think.
Fair enough. Well, thanks for gutting my favorite scene of all time.
Sorry.
I'm kidding.
I like them, but you know, it has a different tone and different message than the rest of the episode. It kind of stands alone, you know, which I really like.
Mm-hmm. And you get a bit of that Kirk angst, like, why me? They're looking at me to make the next decision. What if I'm wrong? You know?
Yeah.
Really echoes of that Pike scene from The Cage, right? Where he says there's 203 lives. I decide who lives, who dies, and all that stuff. And sometimes I just want to go away. And Kirk says, I just want to be on some long sea voyage somewhere, not too much deck tennis, no responsibilities. It's kind of a really cool scene.
Yeah, this scene works so much better when you're really familiar with Star Trek and you've seen a lot of episodes. As an early episode, it's still good, but I think it's even better later because it's like these characters, as we know, go through so much, and I can see McCoy saying something like this to Kirk throughout their years together, and it's so early on that it seems surprising to me that he would and I know they've got a past history before serving on the ship, but still, I just think it plays better later in the series.
Yeah, because of the nature of their relationship and all of that.
Because I mean, if you think if it is the 9th episode produced, you know, these characters haven't and these actors haven't been around each other that much at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. That's true for sure. So after that, we get kind of the final confrontation between the Enterprise and the Romulan ship. And we've got the coolant leak in the phaser room. And of course, we got Spock saving Styles. And Tomlinson dies, sadly. And we get that final scene between Kirk and the Romulan commander on the view screen, which is another just iconic Star Trek scene that a lot of people remember. Any thoughts?
I like that it says when the thing is leaking, that on the wall it says phaser coolant something or whatever. Like I love the indicating of it. So so the audience knows, oh, that's really bad. What's going on?
Yeah, because the smoke's filling the room wasn't a bad sign at all. Yeah, gotta have this light blinking saying, "Hey, I'm leaking."
Gotta have the big stenciled name.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I actually, the scene between Kirk and the Romulan commander is far more emotional for me as an adult than it was as a child. Although I was an extremely emotional child, don't get me wrong, but I didn't have the maturity to really understand all of the nuance of that scene at the time. But as an adult, and I have seen this episode many times, it's probably been a couple of years since I'd seen it. And I was also just feeling extra super emotional when I watched this. And so I was just crying through the whole thing, especially when he starts with like, I might have called you friend. I'm just, okay, you're killing me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I actually found it very emotional because we watched this guy who didn't want to be doing what he was doing, and I'm starting to wonder, did he have a family? Did he have like a wife and children, or was duty all he had known and all that he had done with his life? And was he happy about that in his final moments? Did he regret any of this? All these things going through my head while I'm just crying my little eyes out.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, the delivery of those lines too, just one more duty to perform, before he, destroys his ship. And that other line that you're talking about, in a different reality, I could have called you friend. Interestingly enough, if you read the Star Trek ongoing comic series, the Kelvin timeline, Kirk does meet this Romulan commander and they become close allies, which is
nice.
That's kind of funny.
Forgotten about that. I want to go back to that.
So in a different reality, he did call him friend.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris, thoughts?
I don't know why he said in a different reality I could have called you friend. Is it because they were playing this head game, this back and forth with each other, and they were getting in each other's head while they were doing it?
No, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that they were at their situation was the Romulans wanted a war.
Right.
They were enemies. They started out on the opposite sides of the battlefield. But had the Romulan altercations not happened, war, depending on which side you ask, had none of that happened, had they come across each other in a different way, therefore a different reality, then they wouldn't have been enemies. And they were so much alike that they probably would have been friends.
So this is like the Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? Like, why are you because you're a Capulet and I'm a Montague, that's why we don't like, that's why we have to not like each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh.
And there's this bond between them that happens, and we see it on both sides as well, right?
Oh, wow.
The Romulan commander says he's a sorcerer, that one he sees into the mind, like he's just like, oh, we're on the exact same wavelength. And Kirk,
and he respects him.
Yeah.
Oh, Brandi, that is so awesome. Thank you for that explanation.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's
great. It was kind of muddled. I apologize.
No, it made total sense.
I don't get it. Just kidding.
Okay, Bruce. Once upon a time. I'm gonna stop.
Yeah, but yeah, I love that, and even Kirk's respect for him. I underestimated him. I won't do that again. Like, he's realizing that, like, oh, this isn't just some other starship commander. He's my equal. Like, this is a really close battle of wits here. And there's actually an outtake. Wait, no, damn it, I got it wrong. There's actually an outtake where they cut it from the episode and Kirk salutes the Romulan commander as he's destroying his ship, which I'm really glad they cut out because it looks really weird. I looked for a picture of it. I think it's in the Star Trek book, The Lost Scenes, that we covered on Literary Treks once. But I was looking online for a picture of it and I couldn't find it. But yeah, it's that same shot of Kirk, but he's got his hand up like that, which looks really weird in Star Trek. Yeah, me too. Oh, definitely. And then, so at the end, that final scene with Angela Martine in the chapel that we talked a little bit about, and then Kirk walks bravely down the corridor as the captain of the Enterprise to the credits. So there we go. Balance of Terror.
There was something that happened during that scene that really affected me. The day that I watched this episode was actually the 15th anniversary of my father's death.
Oh.
And I guess I don't even know why I decided to watch the episode that night. Maybe it's because, Trek was the love that we shared. But when Kirk says to her, it never makes any sense. This happened And I was crying for about like 15, 20 minutes after the episode had ended. And, he does say, you do know there was a reason, but when it comes to my father dying, there wasn't any reason, and except cancer sucks. So it was something that affected me in a way that I did not expect, and just kind of blindsided me. And so now I'm going to have that connection every time I watch this episode from now on. So, which is okay. Yeah. You guys know I'm used to crying, but it was just, because at the beginning of the episode, I'm like, oh, wait, one of these people dies. Was it the guy or the girl? And then I remembered, it was the guy, but I didn't remember that line. So, and when he says that, I'm just, this is really hard.
No, you're gonna make me cry too.
It's interesting how
that's a great line.
It's you watch these episodes over and over again. You're so familiar with them, but you change and situations in your life change, and all of a sudden your perspective of episodes change.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like episodes become new again,
or like a line that you never paid attention to, and it's like it just hits you in a different way, and it means something, Look
at that. She has a stage manager that brought her.
It was amazing.
My stage manager Dave brought me
Thanks,
tissue.
Dave.
I should have known better. I should have had some on hand already. So, yeah.
Oh man, no, oh yeah. That's I'm kind of speechless now because there's so many things, so many examples of that was perfectly put, how we change. And like,
right,
when I watched this as a kid for the first time, I was probably like, ooh, cool, these two ships are shooting at each other and oh yay, the good guys won. That's the level that I watched this at. And then as we grow, as we mature, completely unexpected meanings can come from parts of it that we just didn't see coming. That's amazing. Thank
it's like
you.
The DS9 episode, The Visitor, was always my favorite. But when I first saw it, I was younger, and I related more to the Jake character. It's like, gosh, if that was my dad. Now when I watch it, it's opposite. I relate more to Ben Sisko because I'm a dad.
Yeah,
that episode has totally two different meanings for me the first time I watch it and when I watch it now. And it's still emotional every time I watch it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Sorry, I brought the conversation to a screeching halt again.
No, it's funny because we were talking before we started the broadcast as well, and in a much smaller way in my life, part of this episode just kind of tinged something off in my head, because as the episode started, I started watching it today. The wedding starts, Scotty brings in Angela Martine, and then they go to red alert and they have to cut the wedding short and run off. Well, yesterday, I found out that the province that I live in, Alberta, is banning gatherings of 15 people or more through the rest of the summer now. So that's going to be not allowed. Our wedding day, me and my fiance, is July 25th. So that's not happening now. And it was something we were already expecting. It's not a big, huge shocker or anything like that. But like that just kind of tinged in my head as I was watching this. I was like, that's a wedding that's not happening for one reason, and our wedding's not going to happen yet for a reason of this emergency interrupting it kind of thing. So
you'll never be able to view this episode in the same way.
I mean, it's not even, I mean, that'll always kind of be in the back of my mind, but I think our wedding is going to have a much happier ending, of course, than this one did, because we will eventually have it. So,
right.
But it's just something that popped into my head. So
layers.
Will it be in the chapel?
Not that chapel.
No. No, it was planning to be outside. on July 25th, or inside if the weather is bad. But depending on when it happens, that might have to change. So October or November is not conducive to outdoor weddings in northern Alberta.
It's not very conducive to indoor weddings either, when taking pictures. So it rained cats and dogs on my wedding day, which was October 11th. So
nice.
Yeah. First snow in the mountains that day, etc. And the people who decorated my car. That smeared that mess all over my windshield, and it was bad.
Oh no.
It was really fun driving through the rain with that gunk on there. Thanks, friends.
Are you still friends with them?
Distantly. Everybody is married and has kids now, so we rarely see most of those people. We talk to them Facebooky things from time to time. But
how many years ago was that?
Oh, it'll be 23 years in October.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's about how old I am. Why is that funny?
Because we know how old you are, darling.
So do we want to go around the room and give final thoughts on the show, or anything that we didn't bring up that you would like to talk about? Chris, let's start with you.
Well, I remember the first time that I saw this episode was during summer when they showed all the TOS episodes when I was in high school, I believe, in the mid 90s. And when I first saw the episode, I kind of thought it was a little boring, to be honest. And now I enjoyed a lot more now. And I really like it, especially after after having seen Picard and really exploring the Romulans a little bit more. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I love that the early TOS episodes, when they're still trying to figure out what they're doing with the lore of Star Trek and all of that kind of stuff. And you notice a lot of things that don't quite make sense yet. So that's cool. And again, and they're talking about in the chat, the score to this episode is really, really great.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good point. Definitely. Bruce?
What did I miss?
I think I'm missing something too.
Chris and I are just on the same wavelength.
Yeah. Because we're both 23, so we get each other.
Okay.
Makes sense. Yeah.
What do I think? Yeah, so like I said, I had this on VHS and whatever and all that stuff. When I watched it, first of all, when I was watching, this is the first time I watched it since Star Trek Picard, and I really thought, oh, this is really I'm gonna look at this differently, and that didn't really happen for me. I don't know, maybe because I've seen it so much. I don't know, but I would say that this is one of my top favorite TOS episodes. Definitely in the top 5, maybe in the top 3 or something. I don't know, but every time I watch this one, I have the same thought. I feel like this is a perfect Star Trek episode. To me, it has everything perfect about Star Trek into it. It kind of does remind me of the Wrath of Khan in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. But also, I think for some reason when I see this episode, I think how if somebody came to me and said, I've never watched Star Trek, or I've never watched the original series, what would be a good episode to start with? I always feel like this is the one. I always feel like this is one, like if you just want to see one episode, check this one out. Like I like, Journey, what am I trying? City on the Edge of Forever. But it doesn't have that Star Trek, on the starship with the crew. And, this to me gets all the marks. So that's why. And also and I like the whole, I guess one thing I did think about Picard and some other things is Styles and the bigotry, and people say with newer Star Trek, like, oh, everybody's perfect. But no, we're seeing this in an early episode that not everyone in Starfleet is perfect. They're still dealing with bigotry. There's still some members that dealing with those things. The other thing I really love, which we didn't mention, and I'll share this, Dan, if you want to share this on screen.
Sure.
This is one of my favorite parts of this episode. And it's Uhura sitting there at navigation.
Yes.
Just, I mean, I love this shot too. Just her stance. It's like, yeah, I'm in control.
Yeah, I'm sitting here.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
Yeah.
I love that, especially for this time period that this was made. You know, we're talking mid 60s here, and we have this African American woman that is a member of this bridge crew who not just can do communications, she can move right up to navigation and take over there.
Yeah.
I mean, I just love it. Love that part.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that that screen cap, because I did have that moment in my notes, but realized I forgot to grab the screenshot of that too. So it's such an iconic moment, and yeah, very beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, and sitting right next to her is an Asian American right there too. And again, you don't see that all the time in the 60s. And I've heard other people say online when they heard we were doing this episode about the diversity of the people attending the wedding. Too. So there's a lot of diversity in this episode.
Yeah. And I mean, diversity is one of the many things that Star Trek has been about from the very beginning. And this episode is proof of that. Absolutely.
And don't you feel proud as a Star Trek fan when people say about something, oh, we need more diversity. Oh, I wish, you know, and I'm always like, yeah, we need more diversity in this show and that show. But, you know, we've had it in Star Trek for a long time. Maybe not everything that we needed in there, but a lot of it was there.
Yeah. Yeah. For the time, incredibly diverse.
Right.
For the time. Absolutely.
Right. So 5 out of 5 diverse people.
Brandi, did you have final thoughts you wanted to share?
Yeah, well, that what Bruce said actually reminded me of something, because when everyone is in the briefing room, who's manning the bridge? Uhura.
That too, yeah.
She is in command at that time. So it's implied. I mean, because, you know, when Kirk says, well, get Uhura, and, you know, I don't even remember what he said, but I was just like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, he calls
she's not in there, so she's sitting in the captain's chair right now.
That's cool. I hadn't thought of that, but that makes sense. Yeah.
But yeah, this is a fantastic episode, and even with my little nitpicky things, I still rank it in my top 5. And now it will forever remind me of other things that I hadn't anticipated. But it really just shows you all of the strongest points of Star Trek as a whole, and the respect that is given to diversity, but also just the respect given to the Romulan commander as well, who is supposed to be his enemy. That is a really strong statement there, is that they didn't necessarily have to be enemies, and you don't have to hate your enemy either. And that's something we really sorely need to remember in this day and age. So yeah, top marks from me always on this episode.
Yeah, I think all I can do is echo a lot of what you all have said. So yeah, the quintessential Star Trek episode, that whole respecting your enemy, and the fact that there doesn't have to be that hatred between them, that really sticks out in this episode. He's not a faceless, nameless, well, I guess he's nameless, but they're not faceless, you know, others that are just to be hated. And we see that through the character of Styles, of how that thinking is not the right way to be thinking about the situation. And he's called out on it, which is great. You know, I think even in television shows where they have a character like that who is espousing those ideas, and we as the audience are kind of supposed to instinctually know that they're wrong, but they just rely on you kind of knowing that. This episode, Kirk calls him out on it and says, there's no room for that attitude here. Leave that in your quarters. You're not being professional, and I won't have it. Like, I love that. I think that's huge. And I think, you know, it's a bit of a cliche cliche, but it's a true one. All that's needed for evil to triumph is for good people, and I'm going to say people, not men, to do nothing, right? And so that modeling that behavior of calling that out when you see it, I think is just beautiful, and I absolutely love it. So top marks, one of my maybe top 2 or 3 episodes of the original series for sure.
It's moving up the more that you guys are talking about it too. In my mind, it's going on up the list a lot. Yeah.
Well, and there's, I don't know if you ever heard, there's a cut scene that why are you laughing?
I don't know.
I feel like
because
this is
I feel like
there's a cut scene where after Tomlinson dies, McCoy tries to save him by injecting disinfectant into him.
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
It didn't work.
oh.
It just made him, just killed him for good.
He should have used UV light.
You notice how I bring that up and Dan's internet starts to go bad right now?
Brandi froze. No.
Oh.
Speechless.
Uh-oh.
We're losing you, Dan.
Oh no.
Is it really bad right? It looks really bad right now.
A little pixelated.
We can hear you.
Hearing is fine.
I think you're delayed a little too.
Okay. Well, I think I'm delayed, yes.
Yeah.
Not as much as you were, but I think you're back to normal.
Oh, that's good.
Mostly.
It's coming back a bit now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mostly. As normal as I ever was, which is...
Normal's overrated.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I guess all that's left now is to put it to the commenters, the listeners, the watchers, the next 4 episodes that we see. And
4 movies.
So far, they've all been Romulan episodes we've done, interestingly enough. So
oh, wow.
Throw out your picks for episodes or films. 4 of them. For the first 4 that we get. Okay, so there's Star Trek Beyond, I see. From Chris Hill. The Voyage Home again. Uh-oh.
Bride of Chaotica.
Bride of Chaotica. Ooh.
Love it. One more.
We need
Let's
one more.
Chrysalis.
Generations.
Oh.
Well, no, it was
Interesting.
Chrysalis came first.
Oh, sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
Chrysalis.
Yep.
They both popped up at the same time for me, so.
Yeah. Okay, we have our 4. Stop saying.
So how does this work? You pick from those first 4?
No, we do a poll. A poll.
We'll do it to poll, yes.
It's a poll.
On Twitter.
I must confess I was not here. I did not listen last week, so.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Not everyone's perfect.
Wow. That's true. This is true though.
Yeah, so 2 films and 2 episodes, and none of them having to do with Romulans. So interesting.
True.
All right. So yeah, once we're wrapped up here, I will make the to poll on Twitter on @Kertrats, KERTRATS, and go vote for which episode you want us to talk about next week.
Yeah.
Nice.
Do that.
All right. Well, with that, I guess all that's left is to say good night and good luck, everyone.
Thanks for having me. Letting me crash the party, guys. I love you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And let's do a quick round, where people can find you, they can follow you on Twitter and wherever else. So, Chris, why don't you lead us off?
Okay, I'm at CD Littlefield on Twitter and Instagram, and I also host Postcards on the Line and Postcards from the Edge on the Trek FM network, which is the fan response podcasts to Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Picard. And all of you guys have been guests on my show.
Yes, we have. I'm sorry, I was just yawning as you were doing that. And it's not because I'm bored. I'm just extremely tired.
That's why I just move in front of the pop filter when I really need to have a yawn.
Nice.
And
So
yes, Pastor Andy, Dan does vote. We all vote too in that to poll.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I can't vote on it from my main account, but I may or may not have another Twitter account that I vote for my choice on.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I may have a second account as well.
I don't.
So, Brandi, where can we find you on your main account and maybe your second account?
No, well, the other account is my cat. That's the absolute truth. You can find me on Twitter at BrandyWine12. You can find me on Trek FM doing the Edge main show with my friends Liam and Nick. And you can also someday again find me doing Live from the Edge if Discovery ever makes it back to season 3.
We got to get the orchestra together.
They do, and I understand the hurdles with that. I totally do. It's just depressing. You can also find me. Where else can you find me? I do a podcast with my husband Dave called the Dark Corner Podcast, where we talk about stuff and things from a darker perspective. It's always full of nerdy stuff because we are big nerds. I also do swear a lot, not always, but sometimes a lot on that show. And I also have a podcast called Headcanon that has not had an episode out for a little while because I was sick. And then work exploded, not literally. And I have had trouble finding time or motivation sometimes to just get done. And then I was having technical difficulties as well with my recording software. That problem is now solved. So I'm going to get that episode recorded this weekend, I swear. And yeah, you can find both of those, Headcanon and the Dark Corner Podcast, at darkcornerpodcast.com.
Nice. Bruce?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Admiral_Rex. That's Admiral with underline Rex. And you can find me on Positively Trek with Dan. We're recording an episode tomorrow. We'll take suggestions of topics that we're going to record because I had something that I'm not going to do that one. I don't like that idea. Anyway, and then go listen to that other show. What's it called? See, I'm tired. Literary Treks. I couldn't think of the name. So we have a new episode coming out this Sunday with guest Suzanne Williamson from To the Journey, and she's in the chat, I see too. And then we're doing the novel Star Trek Voyager 7 of 9.
Ooh.
So that's a good one. Check that out. And that's it. Oh, and I'm on the Star Wars Report. The next episode on Star Wars Report will come out. Then I'll be on. I think we're doing a live show on May the 4th. I'll be on that one.
Makes sense.
It's clever.
May the 4th be with you.
Yes.
Indeed. And you can find me at Kertrats, KERTRATS. Like I said, look there in a few minutes for that to poll, deciding which episode we're going to cover. Bruce mentioned Positively Trek. Speaking of Positively Trek, on a recent episode, we talked about puzzles you can get to while away the time during this, and I did, in fact, pick up.
Got it.
I got it.
I love that one.
The Women of Star Trek puzzle, which is beautiful.
That box is bigger than I expected. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm excited for that. My fiance and I are going to be tackling that at some point for sure.
Wow.
And of course, Literary Treks and all that good stuff. So thank you everyone for watching, and this was a lot of fun, and we'll see you next week.
I like your idea, Christopher Hill. I might do it.
Oh,
that's a good idea, right?
About books we like to see on screen. I like that idea.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
Vote on the poll.
Yes.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Night.
Bye.
Live long and